Well, the Oscars were just on, apparently. I'm not sure that anybody really watched it, but nevertheless, apparently it was on. One of my favorite actors, Brad Pitt, decided to make a comment about the impeachment hearing and so on, and that's another guy struck off the list. And then we find out just a day later or so, Harrison Ford referred to President Trump as a SOB or something along those lines. And that's another guy struck off the list who I always liked. And my point here, folks, is that I don't really care anymore. I really don't. Everybody, I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and this is your Right Angle made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. And guys, I was just made a couple speaking events, a couple speeches in the last 3 times I was out. And I was kind of coming to some new conclusions. And the main conclusion is this: is that I believe that we were doing this Cold War 12-part podcast on the Cold War, and I'd referred to the Cold War as America's longest war at 42, 43 years old, depending on how you mention it. But it was only this last weekend I realized actually the Cold War is America's second oldest war. The longest war in American history is the Culture War, and I believe that the culture war has already gone the same way that the Cold War did. In Ronald Reagan's immortal words, we win, they lose. The culture war is far from over, but I think it's won. And I want to use this example to cover just one of these areas. Steve, let's start with you. When I was making this case just this last weekend, I was saying that the weapons that the left used to try and turn this country into a progressive nation, socialist nation, were much sharper 50 years ago than they are now. The news media, people think that they sell news. They don't. They sell credibility. They trash their credibility in order to get indoctrination. Universities used to sell education, but they trash that product because now they sell indoctrination. And Hollywood used to sell entertainment, but they've trashed that product in that brand now they sell indoctrination. And what I'm most pleased about is how little people care about what movie stars have to say, and in fact the level to which people are now openly angry and hostile towards actors making political statements. Do you get that? Do you get that sense as well?
I do. I can't remember which one of the old Hollywood studio executives is. It might have been Jack Warner, but it was back in the old studio days when the studio heads ran their studios and they ran them with an iron fist. He said, if you want to send a message, call Western Union, the old telegraph company. He didn't want messages in his movies. He wanted people to buy movie tickets and sit down and watch the damn movie. And it was made some great entertainment that way. What I'm reminded of, and I don't just apply this to the newspaper business or to TV news, but I think it also applies to Hollywood and the broader entertainment culture. When we were talking about this topic backstage, my brain went to Gail Wynand from Ayn Rand's novel, The Fountainhead. It was so good in all the ways that Atlas Shrugged was not. Gail Wynand was a newspaper publisher and kind of a tabloidy newspaper, if I recall correctly. And he was always, his editorials were always sort of trumpeting the conventional wisdom in a boisterous, tabloidy way. And he realized he never really led public opinion. He just sort of loudly trumpeted the conventional wisdom, which was basically leftist. And his buddy, the architect, Howard Rourke, comes along and needs his defense. And so Gail Wynand decides to use his newspaper to lead a crusade for the right cause, for the just cause. And his subscription numbers plummeted. They just went into the toilet. And it's not because he was defending this great artist. It's because he had never been a leader of public opinion. That wasn't what he did. You can't just change stripes and expect that people go, oh, well, now I should listen to him. And this is what Hollywood, I think, is doing to itself. They were peddlers of entertainment, sometimes great entertainment, sometimes not so great entertainment, mostly middling entertainment, but it was entertainment. And now they're trying to send us a message instead, and we're losing interest. This isn't what you do. sell the tabloid news, make the big blockbuster movie, whatever it is you're going to do, but don't serve it up with a lecture, and certainly don't preach your moral superiority like Jamie Lee Curtis did, bragging about how all of her Oscar jewelry, her gold and diamonds, were ethically sourced. Come on. Entertain us. Don't try
Does that mean she pays a
leave.
decent wage to her helper who ran down to the store to buy those for her?
Those were delivered, I'm pretty sure, by the jeweler himself.
And I think this is it, Scott, is that all of it, I mean, everybody talks about hypocrisy, and hypocrisy is, generally speaking, a repulsive quality because people say, rightfully enough, if this is what you believe, why don't you act this way? Moral and intellectual advice from some of the most immoral and stupid people in society is not going to be generally well taken in any regard. But I get the sense, Scott, that they're really starting to panic. And one of the things that led me to this belief that the culture war is won but not over was when Ricky Gervais just eviscerated them. We talked about that on a show a month ago or so. Basically said, no one cares what you have to say. It's not going to get through to them. They have become different people than they used to be. Hollywood and entertainment used to influence people because the movie stars played heroes and you didn't know what their real politics were. It turns out a bunch of them were far left communists, but you had no way of knowing that. But they all were basically working for a studio that had the discipline to maintain over whatever their personal feelings were. I don't care what you happen to personally think, but for God's sakes, don't chase away half of the audience, regardless of which half it is. Those days are long gone. And the days of people going to Hollywood movies are long gone. And the Oscars and all the rest of it becomes more irrelevant every day. And people's emotional attachment to actors gets weaker every day. There's a time when Harrison Ford saying that would have really bothered me quite a bit. Now I just finally, what a surprise. I don't care. And what do you think? Do you feel the same way? Do you feel that the impact of celebrity on people's opinions is noticeably weaker than it was, let's say, 50 years ago, when people like Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne had earned the love and the trust of the American people, and people did care more about what they were saying back then?
I think that there's something called subject matter expertise. And if I started telling you about nuclear isotopes and how I'm against them, I think that a lot of people would turn off the program because I really don't know even what those words were that I just said. I don't know what they mean or anything like that. And so I have no subject matter expertise when it comes to nuclear engineering. And so if I start to talk about that, you should pay about as much attention as you do when you hear like a 15-month-old child babbling. It's in that cute that he's doing that. And I feel the same way about the actors. And it's hard to, the tough thing is that when actors do their job well, you really believe they're the kind of people they're portraying on the screen or on the stage. And so you think, well, I really like that guy. I mean, he's like me, or, he has some admirable quality that I aspire to have. And you don't realize that he may not be at all like that person that you see on the screen. And then, in fact, the only thing that's really good about him is the fact that he can fake it, that he can pretend to be somebody he's not and do so in such an effective manner that you come to believe that he's the guy you see on the screen. Every once in a while, you hear about a guy who is pretty much the guy you see on the screen. And I think that there was more of that back in the day, especially in a studio system. For example, when Frank Capra was making movies with Jimmy Stewart, and from all accounts, Jimmy Stewart was pretty much the guy that he portrayed, until he met Alfred Hitchcock. But he was kind of that, small town American guy of decent values. My grandfather actually ran into him on a cross-channel ship during World War II, and they wound up sitting up late in the bar on the ship having a conversation. And he said, Jimmy Stewart was just a regular guy. And he said, he talked to me like I was just a regular guy, and we had a great time. And so, every once in a while you find somebody like that. But really, I used to listen to a podcast called You Must Remember This by, I forget what her name was, Karina Longworth, I think is her name. Anyway, it's a great podcast. It's about the early days of Hollywood. And you find that a lot of what you saw on the screen in Hollywood was not what was going on behind the scenes in Hollywood, and that it's a whole industry built on fakery. And that's not a bad thing. That's their job. And so if Harrison Ford or Brad Pitt or Joaquin Phoenix or anybody else has ideas that they want to say about politics, well, they're citizens for the most part of this country. And if they have an idea, fine, go ahead and say your idea. But it's not Han Solo's idea. It's not the Joker's idea. It's not whatever. I'm more offended when they take a character in a movie and have him start mouthing political platitudes than I am when I hear the actor who plays those characters spouting his opinion. Because the Han Solo isn't an American citizen, and he doesn't get a vote, and he really doesn't have a right to interrupt my entertainment with his political ideas.
There's a couple things here that I think are really interesting, and Scott pointed out some things that are relevant to this, I think. And I think probably the best way to describe this is to say that there is a real significant difference between an actor and a movie star, a very, very fundamental difference. In the world of movies today, Joaquin Phoenix is an actor, and if Joaquin Phoenix were to issue some kind of political statement, it wouldn't bother me much because he's an actor. He has played so many roles. He becomes the character so perfectly that I don't know who Joaquin Phoenix really is. I mean, I just know that he's exceedingly good at convincing me that he's various people I see on the screen. So I'm not too much concerned about what somebody like Joaquin Phoenix has to say because I don't feel like I know him. Scott got it right on the head. The people that have the influence over us are movie stars. Brad Pitt and Harrison Ford have played the same person in every movie they've ever been in.
Yeah.
There have been a couple. That's not to say that they're not good actors. They are both excellent actors. Not all movie stars are good actors, but Brad Pitt and Harrison Ford are very good actors. But they always play the same person, and the person that they play are people that you like. Harrison Ford is Han Solo, and he's Indiana Jones, and he's the president of the United States, and
Yes.
he's Jack Ryan, and he is an American icon. He's an American patriot fighting forces of evil. And even in Star Wars, he's an American patriot because he is the high school guy with the fast car. So he's an archetype, and we like that archetype. And when Harrison Ford makes a statement contrary to the character he's played in every single movie he's ever been in, it makes us sad, and it hurts. At least it used to. Same for Brad Pitt. He's got this kind of laid back attitude, this kind of Brad Pitt's just cool and he's kind of tough. He's not a pushover, he's not a weakling, but he doesn't really care about much, doesn't really give a damn. And so it's like when suddenly this guy who I like because he doesn't give a damn makes a political statement, it's like, well, there's another brand destroyed for all of us. Hollywood, the influence of movies and actors on our society. Famous people have always been influential. It goes back to the prehistoric times. But Hollywood has been for 50 years now, kind of like a gut shot deer that's just staggering through the forest, getting weaker and weaker with every step. The love of Hollywood and the love and respect for actors and the fact that the Oscars used to mean anything came from a time when those actors, whether they really did or not, seemed to love America and seemed to be one of us and wanted to be one of us. And I just want to close this thing just very briefly by a personal story. I came to Los Angeles in 1988. I got a job as a temp at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I'd been in town for 2 days, this morning of my second day, and I'm going to work. And working for Enterprise, I went to pick up people and drive them back to the rental car agency because Enterprise will do that. And on my very first day at work, my second day in town, I was in the Beverly Hills office at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I went to this house. I picked up somebody. I'm on I'm on, it's like it's Beverly Hillbillies Street, right? I mean, this is, oh my God, I'm in Beverly Hills. This is it. It was the street with the palm trees. I'm picking up this person, and all of a sudden I look across the street and this bus stops, and then somebody comes to the window and there's like a little bit of action and waving, and then the bus pulls on, and the guy who I'm picking up comes out of his house, and I said, was that somebody famous? And the guy said, yeah, that's Jimmy Stewart. That's Jimmy Stewart's house. Every time the tour bus stops outside his house on the Hollywood tours, he always comes to the window to wave. And I thought that's pretty cool. And it reminded me of a time I saw Jimmy Stewart on Johnny Carson talking about fame. And he basically said, I've had the most amazing life ever. I get all of this adulation and I've made all of this money. People pay to see me do this silly thing that I do. And I owe them. It's the least that I could do. I live in this incredible house in Beverly Hills. What I have to walk to the window and wave? Of course I'm happy to do that. It's interesting that he said that on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, because in the years that Carson ran that show, I don't know whether he was a Republican or a Democrat, and it didn't matter. He made fun of people uniformly. He would make fun of the president of the United States. You look at Stephen Colbert now and Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy, whatever his name is, and all the rest of them, Seth Meyers, all these guys. They've turned late night television into The Daily Show. And Stephen Colbert's opening monologue will be a deconstruction of why Donald Trump is a liar. You've lost at least half of the country that way. And my contention, as I said, is that the culture war is won, but it's not over. Midway was the end of the Battle of the Pacific. It was won in 6 minutes on June 4th of 1942. That's when the Pacific War was won. But all of the serious killing happened after that. Same thing with the Civil War. It was over at Gettysburg. The South had no chance after Gettysburg, but the real heavy casualties came in the second half of that war. This is what we're going to see in the culture war too. They know it's over and they know they've lost, and they're going to get more bitter and they're going to get more angry and they're going to get more defensive, and they're going to cling ever more desperately to this lost sense of influence. And as they do that, you can expect to see a whole lot more of this, and it's going to hurt. Because casualties hurt, and it's tough to lose respect for people you used to respect. But in a way, it's good for us. We shouldn't be worshiping people like this. We shouldn't feel it's a relatively childish thing for us to think that we know Harrison Ford. And when Harrison Ford makes a statement like that, the reason it hurts so much is because we all feel like, oh, I thought I knew him. You didn't know him. There was one person who could have stopped the Star Wars debacle. This is all in the same point. Only person I can think of that could have stopped the destruction of Star Wars with The Last Jedi and so on is Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill could have simply said, I refuse to do this script. I will not do it. It's not Luke Skywalker and it's not Star Wars. I will not do it. Yes, he would have been in incredible legal danger. Yes, they could have sued him to the heavens, all of that. But Mark Hamill could have simply said, I'm not doing this script the way it is. It's destroyed Luke Skywalker. I'm not doing it. And if you decide you're going to sue me over it, then I'm going to go public with it. And I'm going to make this entire franchise looks so awful that I am Luke Skywalker and I'm not going to put up with it. But he didn't do that. He cried about it. He complained about it. He warned us about it. He bitched and moaned about it. He did all of these passive aggressive things. But the one thing he didn't do was stop it. And I realized, not that this is a big surprise, but I thought, why didn't he have the courage to stop it? Why didn't he just have the courage to stand up and say no? And the reason is because Mark Hamill isn't Luke Skywalker. That's the reason. Luke Skywalker would have stopped it. Mark Hamill's an actor. He took the paycheck, and that's that. We deserve better heroes than this, and we deserve better people playing our heroes, and we're getting them. We're just not getting them in Hollywood. I'm glad that they're done. I'm glad nobody cares anymore. It's good to be free of the influence of these people, and all of our entertainment now is coming from the internet. I hate to say that I'm the next Harrison Ford, but I think it's pretty much self-obvious at this point. Thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be looking forward to you at the red carpet events and the snapping of the paparazzi as Steve and I and Scott walk up the gangplank of the fabulous Royal Caribbean cruise Is it the Navigator of the Seas, Scott?
Navigator of the Seas, absolutely, yeah.
In Miami on May 15th, we'll be there. We'll look in your general direction, and then we'll have our press people come and tell you what we wore. For Steve and Scott and everybody here at BillWhittle.com, thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you next week on Right Angle.